We'd like to welcome you here. My name is Mario Spagnolo. I'm the interim president of the Windsor and District Labour Council, representing more than 31,000 workers and over 40 affiliates in the Windsor-Essex region. On behalf of all of our executive board, a warm welcome to all of you, those of you in the private sector, the public sector, unionized, non-unionized, actively working, retired or injured, or unemployed. We are here to support all of you in making Ontario better for the years to come. Thank you. I'd like to first acknowledge that we are here on traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of the First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. The region was also a terminal on the Underground Railroad network. I give this acknowledgement of the land we are here located, knowing that this is only an acknowledgement, and that the legacy of colonialism, racism, inequality, and violence continues today. I know that as a settler, I and the people and governments where we live have a great deal of work to do in the work of truth and reconciliation with Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit people on these lands that many today call Canada. We do this work in solidarity. Once again, welcome everyone to our rally on this May 1st, May Day, Workers' Day, International Workers' Day, commemorating the historic struggles and gains made by workers and the labor movement. A day recognized across the globe. The labor movement, the workers' fight, the call for social justice. And this year, I would put forward, is an even more critical year to celebrate workers and to highlight the sacrifice of everyday people. Today, we want to remind the community that we must fight for a better Ontario. It is up to us, all of here today, to continue our advocacy in the area of workers' rights, patient care, public education, disability rights, poverty, social justice, migrant worker rights, and the list goes on. Don't let anyone forget that this is the labor community that through action, advocacy, lobbying, door knocking, strikes, protests, petitions, organizing, and mobilizing day in and day out that ensures that those in power, those with money, those who can make change, don't forget about the little people, the people on the front lines, the service workers, the frontline healthcare workers, the farmers, the men and women in our factories, those who kept society going in the middle of this global pandemic. I do want to recognize and give a shout out to all of our educators across the province, and in particular to Windsor and Essex County for standing up for public education today and tomorrow. You may know that I am a public elementary teacher, and like all educators, we are very proud of the work that we do. We take our role in our schools seriously, and the last 2 years have highlighted the importance of classroom learning. When I'm invited into schools to read my favorite book to classes of students, I choose the book by Dr. Seuss entitled Yertle the Turtle. And there's a line in the book that summarizes quite nicely something that all politicians from every political stripe, especially our current government at Queen's Park, need to be reminded of their moral obligation. And it goes like this. I know on top you are seeing great sights, but down here at the bottom, we too should have rights. These few words clearly explain what democracy is all about. And it goes for all of us in leadership positions, in our workplaces, at City Hall, Queen's Park, Parliament Hill, school board offices, hospital boardrooms, corporate boardrooms, and the list goes on. That we are here to represent the people, and we cannot forget about their needs and their rights. And let us never forget this awesome responsibility on May Day, International Workers' Day. Great eye! Yesterday, Premier Ford unveiled his campaign bus, and it has been dubbed the Yes Express. Over the last 4 years, we have all witnessed and experienced what the Doug Ford government has said yes to. He has said yes to restricting bargaining rights and restricting wages. He said yes to ignoring children and young adults with autism, and yes to paving over green space and sensitive environmental areas. He has said yes to paving over the green space and rewarding big developers, big businesses, and individuals with deep pockets. And under his leadership, he has said yes to scandals, cuts to public education, and we have witnessed yes to ignoring seniors in long-term care. And we've seen him say yes to holding on to millions of federal dollars in the middle of this pandemic. This afternoon, brothers and sisters, friends and comrades, it's time to say no to the current situation in Ontario and instead build together for a better tomorrow. I have the privilege of welcoming several different speakers this afternoon to speak on specific items. Our first speaker, who I'd like to welcome to the microphone this afternoon, is Sharon George, Executive Director of Can-Am Indian Friendship Center and Indigenous Elder. Welcome to the stage, Sharon. A big round of applause for our guests.
I first of all want to say thank you for the words just spoken, because those words are so important, and those are going to be that message that you're going to hear today, and that we need to definitely go forward. So those are the words that are going to carry us today. Those are the words that are going to start us on our journey. And we need to be mindful of all of those things that have been talked about, even that land acknowledgement. So what I'm here to do this day is to give a little greeting from our people in the way that we do it, to get this day going in a good way. So Sagoli's gonna go. Greetings, how are you? My given name is Wadadi, and it means she who speaks. I'm from the Onondaga Nation, the people of the Standing Stone, and better known as Oneida of the Thames. I'm Turtle Clan, and as said, I am the new Executive Director at Can-Am Friendship Center. I'm very honored to have been asked by Brian Hogan to start this day in a good way and acknowledge the land and the people of this territory. In my way and in my people's way, before we conduct any duties or business, we give words of thanksgiving. And so first I would like to give thanks to the Creator for all that we have been given. I give thanks to all of the workers and the people that come here today to address the important issues on minds of people. So to each one of you who have taken time away from your families, we ask that as you return to your families, that all is good and well as you left it. We give thanks to Mother Earth for the goodness that sustains our life, with all of the plants, the trees, the food that grows, and everything upon the earth. We give blessings to the waters that surround us. We ask the waters to be protected and to sustain life. We give thanks to the sky world, the brother, the sun, that continues on with his responsibilities without falter. The sun that provides us the warmth and the light. And lasting, we give thanks to our grandmother, the moon, to take care of us with her responsibilities at night as she shines down upon us. So I have given our greeting and thanks for all. Let us now put our minds together as one and begin this good day. Y'all go.
We'll start with the chant. If you join in with me with the chant, "The people united shall never be defeated."
The people united shall never be defeated. The people united shall never be defeated.
Great job. The people united shall never be defeated. On stage with me today at this moment is Mary Beth Rocheleau, registered nurse, disability advocate. the founder of advocating groups My Vote Counts and Parents of Adults with Disability Advocacy and Support Group. She'll be talking about the crisis adults with disabilities are facing in Ontario and the deterioration of developmental services. Welcome to the stage, Mary Beth.
I just want to start off by thanking Brian Hogan and the Windsor and District Labour Council for asking me to speak today and actually caring about our disabled community in Ontario. Yep. I want to thank my good friend Lisa Gretzky, who came up here to support me, who cares and gives our disabled community a strong voice in Ontario. My name's Mary Beth. I'm 56 years old and I work full-time as a registered nurse. I'm also the founder, like I said, they were saying, of 2 advocating and support groups. The first one is PAD, Parents of Adults with Disabilities, and the second one is My Vote Counts. We encourage people with disabilities to vote. I'm also a single mom of 2 amazing young adults, a 19-year-old Grace and 22-year-old Gregory, who is severely disabled, and he has autism. Sorry. Gregory cannot speak and he needs 24-hour care. Please bear with me. I'm very emotional right now. I'm exhausted and I'm very angry and hurt by what's been happening to the disabled community. I want to thank Mrs. George for everything that she said, because even though I have all these feelings, I'm still very grateful at the end of the day for my son. Sorry. I haven't publicly spoken about 3 years. So I'm here today to voice my concerns and frustration with our government. You see, the entire disability population in Ontario is in crisis. Many would not know this unless they have a disabled person in their family. It's not just children with autism suffering. My son has autism. Our entire disability community is in crisis. Childhood therapies are crucial for our disabled children, but at the end of the day, they need safe, supported housing and food. They're basic human needs. There is no supported housing for our disabled, none. Back in 2016, it was estimated there was a greater than 25-year wait list for supported housing in Ontario. Shame. Today, it is estimated that the wait list is greater than 40 years. Shame. How did that happen? Past governments happened. The Liberals and the PCs. The sad truth is that the past and present governments totally neglected and ignored the disability housing crisis. They were 100% negligent. This means that aging parents of adults with disabilities will not live to see the day they see their adult disabled child live in safe, appropriate, supportive housing, a place they can call home. This means that we aging parents lay awake every single night worrying what is going to happen to our vulnerable adult child when we die and no longer can care for them ourselves. I cannot explain with words how much this stress has impacted parents across the province. When we die or no longer can care for our adult children, they're being forced to live in psychiatric units, nursing homes, hospitals, homeless shelters, or on the streets, and the thought of this rips my heart out. Our government not only refuses to address this crisis, they refuse to even acknowledge it. Our vulnerable adults with disabilities just do not matter to them. I'm here today to tell our government that my son matters, and so does every single person living with a disability across this province. What does it say about a government that does not care about our vulnerable It says a lot and it's not good. People living with disabilities that are receiving the ODSP, the Ontario Disability Support Program, are forced to live in poverty. Imagine living with a disability trying to live on $800 a month. This means many disabled in our province are forced to choose between paying rent and buying food. I am appalled by the lack of empathy and compassion our government has for these people, and I am ashamed of them for constantly implying that our disabled are just lazy and do not want to work. This message has been clearly sent by our government to the disabled over the past few years, and it is disgusting. Shame. Shame. Our government is purposely stigmatizing our disabled community to the public as being lazy. They're not lazy. They're intellectually and physically disabled. As a parent, I'm begging and pleading with you all to help us bring this crisis to attention. All persons with disabilities across the province are suffering dearly, and when our disabled children turn 18, it hits the fan. Childhood services stop and they're put on adult wait lists for services and supports. There are a lot of other issues going on right now. We're living through a pandemic. Our elderly and disabled have suffered immensely in long-term care, and many have died, and it could have been prevented. I salute all the LTC workers who are taking care of our vulnerable and extremely difficult and challenging circumstances. Bless you all. Our Ontario nurses have been battling COVID like the great warriors they are, and I'm so proud and honored of all my sisters and brothers, yet our government treats them with such disrespect and disregard. Now just imagine trying to get through this pandemic, being vulnerable and disabled, trying to live off $800 a month, not being able to drive, perhaps having no family to help, and having other health issues, not being able to afford groceries or even go grocery shopping. They can't afford online shopping. We all know how expensive that is. Imagine being a parent constantly worrying about your adult disabled child and what will happen when you die. Some of the biggest issues that we parents of adults with disabilities face is that we're financially, mentally, and physically exhausted. We are caring for our adult disabled child 24 hours a day and have been for many years, trying to work, but many can't. There is no time for advocating. It's very rare that I get a chance to actually do this. They can't attend rallies. They can't write letters. There's no money for billboards and campaigns, and many are facing health issues themselves. Being a 24/7 caregiver to a disabled adult takes its toll on you. Housing and food are basic human needs. Therapies aside, more focus needs to be on housing and the cost of living for the entire disability community. All disabled after 18 of age are in the same sinking ship. It is not okay that we as a province are allowing this to happen. It's not okay we as human beings are allowing this to happen, that people that cannot take care of themselves. And it's not okay that our government ignores the disabled and treats them like they are less than human and disposable. It should not be whoever has the loudest voice wins. We should be helping all of our vulnerable disabled because it is the right thing to do. So please help us bring attention to the supported housing crisis and ODSP. We desperately need your help, and thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Next, we'll be inviting TJ Travis, an advocate, a community artist, currently the executive director of ArtSite. TJ will lead our poets to the mic while doing one of his passions, drumming. TJ?
I just quickly want to send my gratitude and my appreciation that we can all gather in this way. The people who have spoken so far, please give them lots of love, because we're trying to change the world out here. Weaved in between the impassioned speakers, we have a group of poets who are going to be sharing their words with us, and I'm just here to simply open up the stage by providing some rhythm. So thank you so much. Thank you to the organizers.
warm welcome to Casey Ketch, our first poet who will be addressing poverty.
So my name's Casey Ketch. I'm a local poet, and I decided to speak or read my poem on poverty. It's a topic that's very near and dear to my heart and affects about 2.4 million other Canadians a year living under the poverty line. Can I just adjust this? So this poem is called Into the Auctioneer's Hands. I walk through the doors to the auction, holding my soul in my hands, and go and find a seat amongst the sinners and saints alike, waiting for my turn to sell all I have left to the highest bidder. You see, I haven't eaten yet this week, and can't honestly tell you the last time I dared to dream or slept in a bed that was mine. I glance at the woman beside me. A look of shame has washed over her face. She tells me she needs the money to buy food for her hungry boy at home. The auctioneer takes his place on center stage, clears his throat, and begins the bidding. He's dressed in red, his horns sharp and to a point. He sells the first soul to a man, dressed similarly, to the right. I watch as soul after soul go to the highest bidder, all men dressed in crimson, adding to their collection. Each time the auctioneer's gavel bangs, another soul lost, from the hungry, the desperate, the ashamed. For what? A warm meal to eat? A roof over their head? In what world did these things stop being essential? Women stealing formula to feed their babies? When you have to choose between spending your last dollar on an apple or ramen noodles, and we wonder why there's an obesity epidemic. Opioid use is on the rise because when poverty is your reality, you'll do anything to be anywhere but here. Governments knock us around and make us fight for the necessities, systems in place to keep you compliant, taxes on taxes to keep the poor right where they want them, selling their souls at a loss. The auctioneer finally calls my number, sings his song, and does his dance, and my soul goes for sale to a red gentleman like the others. I go and collect my money and turn to face the door. My body feels a little lighter and emptier all the same. At least I won't be hungry anymore. But what is a person without a soul? Better off than dead. But I shouldn't have to sell everything I own just to live to a man dressed in red. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey and TJ. Next to the podium here, we'll invite Jo-Dee Brown, RN Bargaining Unit President at Hotel Dieu Grace Healthcare, ONA Local 8, speaking about healthcare. Welcome, Jo-Dee Brown.
Good afternoon, activists, families, and friends. As a registered nurse for over 45 years in this community, I've seen many changes, and I've been impacted by the government's decisions regarding health care. At this time, we are witnessing one of the biggest insults to health care in our memories. The current PC government, led by Doug Ford, has demonstrated time and time again that they do not care for health care. In fact, they don't care about any female-dominated profession who provides care. The passing of Bill 124 must be the highlight of this man's personal agenda against women and public sector workers. The wage suppression legislation that has capped all increases in bargaining to a 1% total compensation package has a stranglehold on all of us in the public sector for a period of 3 years. This has also impeded the ability to bargain for reasonable increases to benefits and vacation entitlement as an example. This legislation exempts male-dominated professions such as police and fire departments. They saw increases of real wages of 5 to 6% in the last period of time that this bill has been in place. Hospital RNs have seen a 7% decrease in their real wage. The average gender pay gap for women in Ontario is 32%, and it is higher for women from racialized backgrounds and those with disabilities. This bill needs to be repealed, and the most recent budget announcement has no indication of changes in the status of this bill. Another key issue for nurses currently is the shortage. For over a decade, Ontario has had the lowest RN capita ratio in Canada, with 680 nurses per 100,000 residents. The current numbers indicate that at least 22,000 nurses are needed to meet the current staffing needs. That's equivalent to the entire population of the municipality of Essex. It's all well and good that the current government has announced more beds in hospitals and long-term care, but who do they think will be staffing them? The Ford government has made cuts to public health funding, which has weakened the ability to provide high-quality services. The pandemic has only heightened these issues by making us do more with less. Public health nurses have played a crucial role in contact tracing, vaccinations, and infection control, in addition to the services already mandated or expected in our community. I'll move on briefly to long-term care, but I believe that there'll be other people who speak about this. Over 25,000 residents and 1,150 healthcare workers were infected with COVID-19. There's evidence that the for-profit homes had larger outbreaks and more deaths than the not-for-profit homes. Yet the Ford government has rewarded those for-profit homes by giving them 30-year licenses and more beds. The long-term care patients should be receiving a minimum of 4 hours a day care daily and a skill mix to meet the complex needs, with 20% RNs, 25% RPNs, and 55% PSWs, and one nurse practitioner for every 120 residents. This is recommended right out of the Commission's report on the COVID debacle. Disgusting. Privatization is another key issue, and I won't say much because I know it's going to be the focus of other speakers. Part-time RNs do not have paid sick days. The government needs to reintroduce meaningful legislation that allows all workers to stay home when ill and not feel compelled to report for work ill in order to pay their bills. I commented to a couple of people prior to the beginning of this event that I have more nurses who have been off sick with COVID in the last 4 weeks than the entire pandemic put together, because they are home quarantining because of their children who are coming home from school positive, or they're already positive and it's because of their children coming home from school positive. Violence in the workplace has resulted in an increase in lost time injuries to healthcare workers by 27%. This year, the Ford government decided to take funds from the Workers' Safety and Insurance Board and give it back as a bonus to the employees in record amounts, rather than providing more support to workers. It's bad enough the reimbursement from WSIB is far below the normal daily rate of pay for an RN, and they suffer economically as a result of injuries incurred in the workplace. I'm only touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of the issues in the healthcare sector that are directly or indirectly impacted by the actions of the current PC government. It's time for a change. It's time for a wake-up call to Doug Ford and his team of people who do not care for the caregivers of Ontario.
Thank you, Jo-Dee. Next to the stage, I will call upon Gagny Kaur, field worker of Canadian Federation of Students, student at the University of Windsor, and her talk is entitled "The Sorry State of Post-Secondary Education in Ontario." Gagny?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gagneet Kaur, and I'm a field worker with the Canadian Federation of Students. Thank you so much for joining us in the fight for a better Ontario and a fight for a better post-secondary education system. Post-secondary students like us are the future of Ontario, and this future has never looked more grim. For years, an anti-student government has taken conscious steps to erode an inclusive and accessible post-secondary education sector. Since 2019, the provincial government has cut $333 million in funding. OSAP continues to be more and more inaccessible, and recent grads are graduating with an all-time high debt of 20%. This is forcing students to give up on their dreams of owning houses, starting businesses, and even starting their own families. Our province currently ranks the lowest in post-secondary education funding, allocating only 0.7% of its budget towards it. It is this lack of funding that is forcing students in Ontario to pay some of the highest tuition fees in the country. International students like myself have become scapegoats, and we are being forced to carry the burden of this broken system by paying 4 times the cost of domestic tuition. In return, we receive no provincial health coverage, a deeply rooted systemic racism, and facing barriers that continue to enable our access to post-secondary education system. To top it all, International students like us cannot vote in this election. So this election, be the voice of reason. Student issues are election issues, and it is time that we demand change. We demand access and we demand inclusivity. This provincial election, make sure that you support the cause for free education, a system that is publicly funded, that is accessible, and that is high quality. We demand our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy this is happening today. I'm really excited about the cause we're fighting for here today. Okay. My grandmother says, degrees don't make a woman. A true woman mixes spices to perfection, kneels to serve her husband and ignores the bite of her toddler while it suckles on her sore nipples. She says, darling, the things you must learn aren't written in those books. They lay at your mother's feet under the heat of the kitchen stove. A young man on Twitter feels the need to justify his innocence under a thread about my experiences. He starts off his declaration with, not all men. And it kills me that I'm somehow expected to validate his rage while explaining mine calmly. My girlfriend and I go to a group dinner. Our friend starts off a conversation about the latest additions to the LGBTQIA+ community. He shuffles around the topic with indifference like he has the power to tell us who to be. You see, I am not mad at that. But then he turns towards me, he winks, licks his lower lip, says, I'm up for a threesome when you both realize what's missing, as if to remind us that our bodies are nothing but pleasure tools and really what forms the only basis of his tolerance for our sexuality. You see, from the home to the workplace to the streets to social media, a woman's body is nothing but the subject of a thesis in mind control. So when you hear a poem like this and it does nothing but prey upon your ego, pokes at it till it rises like a beast, only for you to question my pain with empty religious fallacies and brittled cultural norms that you have refused to let evolve, you'd hear me say, go fuck yourself. Because my intentions were never to soothe your insecurities. And every second I spend pandering to your purposeful ignorance is another second a young girl is being taught she needs to dress a certain way to avoid attention from uncles who have no business in her pants anyways. Another day, a woman is killed for daring to walk out on her abuser. Another week, rape victims are plastered across the news and people feign concern for a minute or two. Another season, the world pretends our cries are nothing but empty noises and tells us to tone it down. So yes, I am angry. I wake up livid. I breathe disgust. I write a poem about how much I hate the patriarchy, then I go to bed. I sleep in the fear of the horror that is about to befall a woman right next door or somewhere across the world. Then I rinse and repeat. I rinse and repeat. I rinse and repeat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bon Mi. Next to the stage, founder of Windsor of Change, Rika Bondaru.
Good afternoon, and thank you for that wonderful introduction and a platform to talk about this issue that gets neglected and washed over, but is really important to talk about. It is inspiring and powerful to hear from all of these amazing residents and workers about fundamental issues that matter to all of us. As we stand out here today, to talk about justice and fairness, I also want to applaud all of you for coming out and lending your support. And I want to start talking about how a very key and vital element in this conversation about fairness is climate justice. I'm Niharika, a now local who chose to move here 11 years ago and call Windsor, Essex my home. And through our nonprofit, Windsor of Change, we work every single day towards raising awareness of climate change so that the people here are empowered to address the just division and fair sharing of the impacts of climate change. We hear in some form or the other on a regular basis, through the news, social media, and even our kids, that climate change is something we all need to worry about. That is already changing life as we know it. But why worry about a long-term, possibly distant crisis when there's so much going on at home already? Families are struggling every day to make ends meet. Affordable housing is harder to find than the Hope Diamond. We just dealt with a colossal pandemic, all while still dealing with issues like racism and sexism and unfair access or accessibility issues in 2020s. The truth is that climate issues and climate justice are just as important, if not more. And they're happening here in Windsor, Essex in the form of increasing storms, more heat waves, rapidly changing lake levels, etc., etc. In many cases, ignoring and dismissing the climate crisis is making the other issues a lot worse. In truth, climate change isn't an issue just for the environmentalists. It affects every one of us here, whether or not we've noticed it. For example, did you know that every time a basement floods in our region, the average worker has to take 7 days off of work just to deal with it? Did you know that defunding organizations like IRCA increases flooding risks, reduces water quality, air quality, and opens up critical natural flood barriers and leaves us even more at risk? Right. Did you know that for every $1 that we do not invest as governments and corporations into protective and just policies and infrastructure, we will be losing up to $11 in the form of damages and inflation? That's billions of dollars in total coming out of our pockets. These don't even take into account health, mental health, food, unemployment, accessibility, and other social issues we're already struggling with. The point is that we're all connected to climate change, directly or indirectly. Climate change and climate justice are not just environmental issues, they're human issues. Yeah. Supporting good climate policy means supporting jobs, supporting worker rights, supporting health. And our leaders need to know how important this is to us and how vulnerable we become without timely help and support. I just want to leave you with this. We need all hands on deck. Governments, businesses, community organizations, and most importantly you, the voices that make all of them possible. More than about saving the planet, it's about preserving and bettering our way of life and what we get to leave behind. It's not about taking a side, it's about stepping up. Thank you. Now we have Brooke from Fridays for Future, Windsor, Essex, and she's going to talk about how she's become involved in the climate movement and spurred youth in our region to step up to the plate as well.
So I'm a 17-year-old student, and I wanted to talk about how I got involved. When I was in grade 9, my geography teacher made me aware of climate change, and it broke me. So thank you, teachers. You make passions of dreams. You make my passions a reality. Often when we hear of climate change, we think of something like the polar ice caps melting. We don't think of it here in Windsor, Essex. We're so small, right? We've experienced devastating floods, heat waves, and horrible storms. Flooding in 2017 cost the city of Windsor over $1 million in community restoration. Many families' basements flood. They had to pay out-of-pocket expenses to damages to their home. This, my friends, is climate change, and it is affecting us. That's right. People along the shores of Lake Erie are being forced to move because of dangerous erosion. Water is wearing down our roads. Beaches are being closed because they are too dangerous to swim in. Heat waves and air pollution are affecting our health. Youth in Windsor-Essex aren't just worried for our future, but we are worried for our present. That's great. Yet when we, the people, try to make our issues our alert, we are made to seem crazy. We are not taken seriously as people. The climate movement needs you. It needs our nurses, it needs our teachers, because we are all affected. Climate change affects everyone. We have already been living through climate change, and we have seen the markets left behind environmentally and financially. Our local government has been reacting instead of pre-acting, creating new plans for these disasters after they happen. Yet we probably already know that they are going to happen. Why aren't we acting now? Even though we have seen direct impacts of climate change here, our government doesn't act. The Ford administration doesn't act. When will we act? Will we act when it is too late? Will we act when I am no longer able to afford a house because of climate change? Because of all these issues? Climate change intersects with so many issues we discussed today. We all need to work together, united as one. Not just for our future, but for our present. Being here today has made me so hopeful. You all give me hope for my future, but for my present. And that is what I leave you with. Thank you.
Speaking of hope and optimism, many of our speakers today are very youthful, and that gives me a lot of optimism with the passion that you are showing here, not just in your words, but in your actions and representing your community. And on that front, I'm going to welcome to the stage OSSTF District 9 President, local secondary teacher, speaking on protecting and enhancing public education, Erin Roy.
Hi, thanks for having me speak today. That made my heart sing a little bit. I taught a lot of grade 9 geography, so I'm glad to see that it's wearing off. So thank you very much for having me speak here today. I have an executive officer from provincial office here as well from OSSTF, and he hails from the town of Lindsay, Ontario, so welcome, Colin. It's important as we lead up to the provincial election that we come together today and consistently beat this drum about why we need change at Queen's Park. As the district president for OSSTF District 9, these past few years have threatened the social fabric of public education. One of the best educational systems in the world is currently at risk. The Conference Board of Canada did a study about the economics of investing in public education. Based on that study, we know that every dollar invested into public education brings a return of $1.30 to the economy, but this government would have you believe otherwise. I want to focus on the word public education. This government has demonstrated by their actions that they want to privatize investments of public education. Shame indeed. When they stated that we're open for business, they meant that they want to sell off public goods to the highest bidder. The Minister of Education is a private school educated, and the Deputy Minister of Education was homeschooled. These men are not the results of investments of public education, and it shows. Throughout the pandemic, the Buddies of Ford theme has continued, with private schools receiving more PPE and COVID rapid tests than the public school system. On the sly, funding to frontline public classrooms has been cut every year they have been in power. As we approach post-pandemic class sizes are increasing with the implementation of mandatory e-learning and grade 9 de-streaming under the guise of equity. Staffing shortages have plagued the sector. There has not been a single day this school year that our educational support staff have not worked short staff. And I don't need to remind you that they work with our most vulnerable students. The extended professional services in our schools have long wait lists and backlogs, similar to what we've heard from other speakers today. Not to mention, there are scores of students that have just simply fallen off the radar during this pandemic that require outreach and nurturing to get back on track. In our community, our workers that work with our newcomers to Canada have also been shortchanged with a lack of funding and a lack of security for their services. Throughout the pandemic, educators were not consulted on a single item this government has implemented. We often learned about what was going to be happening in schools through a press conference, and even the school board directors didn't know what was coming. This includes restrictions that our students have had to deal with in our schools, in and out, causing strain on so many of our families and society in general. The mental health of students has suffered, and the Ford government believes that words like resilience will solve the problem, instead of actually tackling them with real investments and consultations from the people that work with the students. Under their tenure, this government has put in wage restraint legislation in places that impact female-dominated sectors, and we heard that also from our nursing sector. If the PCs are to win a majority again, the public services that Ontarians hold dear, like healthcare, like education, will suffer because they will be emboldened to do more of the same. Cuts to funding, increases to workload of an already exhausted employee group, and ignoring the staffing shortages that are out there, and then simply blaming others for their lack of leadership. If you want to know who they are, just pay attention to their actions, not their words. Actions are what delineate and define who leaders really are, and their actions have been shameful. They are. So thank you for having me speak today. So the hub is going to be opening for us. I know we have more speakers to go through, but OSSTF has provided, we have some funding, and so we have food vouchers for everyone who's attended this rally today, and some of my colleagues will be handing them out. Hub is a local business, so as we go through the couple of speakers, make sure you don't go away before you get one of those vouchers that we'll be handing out. So thanks again.
Our third poet for this afternoon is Zonkonto. He will be here speaking on I Would Have Told My Carpentry Teacher That I Love Trees. Welcome to the stage.
Hello everyone. Hello. Hello. This poem that I'm going to do is mainly about how we lose the opportunity when we miseducate children. And I chose to call it, I Would Have Told My Carpentry Teacher That I Loved Trees. To miseducate a child is to miss the chance to create something so wild in their imagination. Something one hot air balloon short of its helium soul, and to watch it lift from the ground to the sound of morning birds to the skin of the sky and see the ridiculous vastness of it all, the way they imagined. Or if you're like me as a child, to remain amongst the trees and let the spirit of the forest bleed into me, such that whatever poetry was growing inside is tentacled with the branches that carries my ancestors' breasts, their chests and shoulders the size of baobab trees. When I heard my carpentry teacher passed away, a strange sadness put a chainsaw to his memory. By all accounts, he was a good man, a man of iron discipline. But to us forest lovers, this man was no god. We had seen trees that towered above him. He was no emperor. The trees had seen his naked soul. But when I heard that he died, something put a chainsaw so deep into his memory, and I heard the loud scream at the root of it. And eventually it crashed with an ear-splitting silence in the depth of the forest. I haven't been there since, but I walked back to see where it lies today with this poem. So these are the things I never got to say to you, Mr. Ngwenya. I loved trees. I woke up in the morning to climb a tree, right in the middle of the front yard, dead center of one of the tiniest spaces in the world. There grew a fir tree so majestic I thought it lived part of its days in the heavens. I thought somewhere in the sky sat this large smiling woman called God that let the tree sit in between her thighs and braided the sweet fruit of the fir tree into her afro puffs. I loved trees. And when they cut that tree around the same time that you started teaching me, you were dead to me. Your classroom became the workshop of the devil. To miseducate a child is to tell them that beauty can only come from destroying things that you love. That certain things can only be pieced together by breaking their spirit. In a classroom this very second, there's a child learning that puppetry is not geometry. That tap dancing in the stars is not astronomy. That studying insects is silly since yellow jackets do not sell in the stock market. Or that their ancestors were not the same voices they had in the forest, in the songs of their roots. The same ones whose tongues you urged us to chop into pieces and stop their poetry mid-sentence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all three poets this afternoon. Great job. Our next speaker from Unifor, local president of the Local 240, Jo-Dee Nesbitt, to the stage, please. Welcome, Jo-Dee.
So many amazing speakers today, but we're here today to celebrate the gains workers have made across the province, country, and all over the world. And I can't think of anywhere in the world that I'd rather be, and I don't feel any more proud than I could be being here with all of you leaders and activists in Windsor, Ontario. So thank you, everybody, for making Windsor a strong community of activists. Thank you. This celebration is also an opportunity to come together to discuss the work that we have ahead of us, and we've heard some amazing speakers articulate the need more than ever to get involved in this next election. Let us not be fooled by Ford's last-minute promises to working people to try and secure votes. That's all it is. We see where that's gotten us, and it's nowhere. We cannot forget what has happened in his tenure, or should I say what hasn't happened in his tenure. Today is a day to call for action on the broken promises of the laws that he's dismantled and repealed that benefited us, working people, middle class, society. We cannot have a society where families must work 2 to 3 jobs to be able to have a home to live in. We can't have a society where people must work 2 to 3 jobs just to afford to put food on their table. $15 an hour doesn't cut it anymore. We need higher minimum wage. We need this action today. We have not seen much from our government to help the citizens except for empty promises. We must send a strong message to Doug Ford that we do expect more from him, and we will be holding him accountable in this next election. So please, everybody, let's get out there, continue to make change, and I'm Windsor proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo-Dee. And with that, I welcome to the stage 3 of our community leaders in Windsor and Essex County. Please, a round of applause, a loud Windsor Essex welcome to Gemma Gray Hall from Windsor-Tecumseh, Ron LeClaire from Essex, and Lisa Gretzky from Windsor West.
Afternoon, everyone. Super exciting to be here today along so many amazing advocates and community leaders. Thank you for the opportunity and the recognition to be here. They've given me a little bit of time, but I do have to say that that new budget that Doug Ford tabled is $2.7 billion and does not keep up with inflation, which is going to mean we're going to see more cuts to PSWs, education workers, teachers, nurses, and all of the social services as well. We need to be vigilant, and on June 2nd, we can make a difference. We just have to continue to band together, and anyone that tells you that it's too much, or anyone that tells you that they've got enough, don't believe them. That's language that they've always used to continue to oppress and divide us, and we see them, and we will be stronger together. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ron LeClaire, and I'm seeking the seat in the riding of Essex. And I'm here for 3 reasons. I have 3 passionate reasons why I'm standing before you today. I spent 30 years with the Windsor Police Service, and what I learned from working in the policing sector was the fact that Liberals and Conservatives have failed to do their job in addressing the most simple social responsibility. They failed on disability, they failed on mental health, they failed on addiction, and they failed on affordability causing a homelessness crisis. And I know that the NDP can do better. I know the NDP can fix it. The second reason that I'm here before you today is in 2014 I decided to become a trustee, like my fellow Lisa Gretzky was at one time, because I care about public education. And what I saw was very troubling. The Liberals were closing schools with a policy that was punitive for having empty spaces. And that caused schools like Harrow District High School to close, and I voted no to closing Harrow District High School. We need to invest in education. So that's the second reason I'm here today. The third reason I'm here today is I am a child of labor. I'm a child of a family that was raised by people that were laborers. And those were very important lessons I learned. And I believe that my success, the fact that I'm here today, is because of the success of labor to ensure that I was able to go to post-secondary school, that I could have vacations, and that was a privilege that I was able to have on the backs of labor. And that's why I'm here today. I often say that I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth, but I was born with a 444 spoon in my mouth, and I am proud of that. And I owe the labor movement to be up here today to represent Essex at Queen's Park. And I need your help to get there. Thank you.
And in a strange turn of events, I am now I have the most seniority. As of Wednesday, I have the most seniority. That's a very strange thing. I'm used to being the newest of the MPPs, but I'm looking forward to having Ron and Gemma join me at Queen's Park. And you know, when you have seniority, you get to choose first, which is why I chose to go last. You know, we heard a lot of talk, and we'll hear more, about the problems that we're facing in this province under this Conservative government. And we've heard some of the problems that we faced under the previous Liberal government. As Ron had said, I was a school board trustee, and in 2014, I decided to run for provincial politics because of one Bill 115 brought under the Liberals and the direct attack that had on the collective bargaining rights of teachers.
Let's remember.
And you know, through a Doug Ford government, we've seen a bill, Bill 124, that does the exact same thing to our public sector workers. Now, I don't want to talk about all doom and gloom. Everybody knows what's going on in the province, and as I said, we'll hear others talk about it. I want to talk about opportunity, and I want to talk about possibility. We know that it is possible to have a province that invests in our healthcare workers and invests in our healthcare system because their working conditions are our care conditions when we need them. We know that it's possible to invest in the education system because we know that for teachers and education workers, their working conditions are our kids' learning conditions. We know that it's possible to invest in post-secondary education so that every single student in this province has equitable access to an education to go on and be our future leaders in our communities. We know that it is possible to invest in the most marginalized people in our community, like Mary Beth's son. For those people who can't vocalize for themselves, we can be their voice and ensure that they live with dignity, with appropriate income, and stable, supported housing. We know that when we invest in the most marginalized in our community, when we raise social assistance rates, we raise everybody up in our community, not just that individual. We know that this is possible, and we in Windsor know it better than probably many communities. We know that this is possible when we all come together like today and we fight back, when we take the government to task. And so I want to thank you all, every worker here, for what you have done in the past to get us to the gains we have today, and for recognizing and coming together to fight for the possibilities and the opportunities of the future. Thank you all so much.
Just to end things off, we're going to get some public involvement here with the chant, and then we're going to hand it over to our musician. Thank you again to OSSTF for the complimentary lunch as well. When healthcare is under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. When public education is under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. When working families are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. When unions are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. When the environment is under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. When you Canadians are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. When the marginalized are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. And when our neighbors are under attack, what do? Stand up, fight back. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. I'm going to turn it over to our musician, Andrew McLeod, to close things up. Have a great afternoon. Let's make Ontario a great place to live again.
Thank you. Yep. Thanks so much, everybody. Fighting uphill sometimes is a lonely fight, and seeing all you here and listening to the beautiful speakers, it put some wind in my sail, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Feel free to join me. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, I still believe. I still believe. We shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, I still believe. I still believe.
A better Ontario would look like a government that takes care of everyday people, including the poor, the unemployed, those who are sick and don't have sick days. A government that invests in public education and public health care, long-term care, and just taking care of things that have been left neglected for the last few years. And I think we have an opportunity to do that. I'm here because it's time to mobilize and get Ontarians on the same page to try to make change for the better. I'm here today to give voice to people that need help to get their voices heard. Here to help those that are marginalized, those who have been forgotten over the years, and I'm here to make a difference. There's a lot of people that are dissatisfied with the status quo and that are looking for change and looking to make a difference. And together we can do that. We can make a better Ontario. We all need to work together and help elect a government that puts investment in people.
A better Ontario, to me, is more affordable and safe access to childcare, more money invested into our education, access to health care for migrant workers, better protection for migrant workers in Canada who we call essential. I'm here today because I feel that, number one, I celebrate May Day. It's a tradition to celebrate all the work that's been done by activists throughout history so that we have a better life. And also, now that I have 2 kids, I want to make sure that tradition, that they carry that tradition and celebrate May Day. And then secondly, especially today, this year, it was important to show solidarity and make sure that, we make a difference this year in our election and make better choices so that we have a better Ontario. Today, I learned at this rally that Windsor-Essex is still a very strong community. I'm very proud of the community that I live in, and I also learned that we as a community and working people, we're stronger together. And after talking with everybody, I feel there's going to be a lot of people out there voting this year, and we all have one thing in common, and that we've all been impacted by this government's negligence, and we all demand better for everybody here.
I think it's very important that everybody remembers, most importantly, the biggest damage that Doug Ford and his government have done for healthcare professionals and public sector workers in general in the last 3 years is to implement Bill 124 and then to have blatant disregard for the work of the healthcare professionals and other health sector and public sector workers in our province. The legislation has not allowed us to keep up with the cost of inflation. It has strangled our bargaining rights because it doesn't just affect our wages, it affects benefits, vacation entitlements, and anything that has a dollar attached to it. So it's made bargaining very, very difficult. Fortunately for the Ontario Nurses Association, we are out of the 3-year period now, and when we bargain the next time around, we'll be able to hopefully freely bargain, and that we don't have a progressive conservative government that extends Bill 124 and instead repeals it. Repealing it is very important because it allows us to go back and renegotiate the period of 3 years that we were not able to. If they just cancel it, we get nothing.
Following the pandemic, the global COVID-19 pandemic, there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from and that we can run in parallel with in terms of climate policy and governance. We need the government to understand and propagate the message that climate change isn't just an environmental issue, it is an everybody issue, that climate change is a social cause and it's affecting everything from affordability to the worker rights to the way we live. It is here now and it is going to affect my generation and the generations to come, and we need more investment into active and social communities. We need active transportation. We need more green spaces. We need denser living conditions so people can live together in a community and reduce their carbon footprint. And we need more transparency in terms of how our green funding is being created and how that money from green funds are being spent. We also need to pay attention to where our resources, everything from how we fuel the grid. So we need a cleaner and more renewable grid so people can fuel their cleaner cars with clean power. We need cleaner jobs, we need greener jobs, and we need everybody to be involved and all hands on deck, including governments and corporations, community organizations, and most importantly individuals, in not the fight towards climate change, but in the organization around climate change.
Today I'm really excited about everything that has gone down. There was so much energy, and I would just like to say I hope people keep up this energy. It's never enough to just come out one day and then stop fighting. We have to continue to speak about these issues. If not, there will never be solutions for them. So the goal is keep going, keep speaking, keep fighting, fight back always. Thank you.
The main issue that I wanted to address with my poem was that you shouldn't have to sell your soul to get out of poverty.
The one thing that I enjoyed about it was that I was speaking about education, because I think that the foundation of children understanding themselves is for them to be educated about a worldview that they are starting to believe in and starting to put their hands into. And for the most part, we steal away their curiosity and love for education because we just want them to be this one thing and not be the full range of who they can be, you know. So I want them to take away that, let the child learn in a way that's comfortable with their curiosity, you know, so that the education means something to them.